In a world overflowing with distractions, we seek meaning. How do we transform ambition into something deeper, into true fulfillment? I'm Sam Pepin, CEO of Course Educa, and I've spent years helping businesses succeed by connecting their goals to something bigger. On the Meaningful Podcast, we explore not just how to win in business, but how to grow as individuals. Through conversation with thought leaders, innovators, and everyday heroes, we uncover the stories that drive us towards something greater. Whether you're striving for success, seeking purpose, or just looking for the next steps in your journey, this podcast is your guide to navigating the intersection of ambition, growth, and meaning. So please join me and our incredible guests as we redefine what's possible in both business and life. Enjoy.
True leadership begins when surface outweighs self-interest. Welcome to the Meaningful Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Pepin. Today we're diving into leading with integrity, building resilient teams, and finding purpose beyond the uniform. Our guest today is David Nordel, a retired U.S. Air Force Command Chief Master Surgeon and the founder of Max Fab Consulting. With decades of military service, including combat deployments and humanitarian missions, David now channels his leadership expertise into helping organizations and individuals develop clarity, resilience, and mission-focused culture. He's also an author and speaker whose work bridged the gap between military disciplines and everyday leadership challenges. If you enjoyed this discussion, please let the world know with a like, a small review, or even a quick share. Your support helps more people find meaningful content just like this. Let's begin. Mr. Dave Nordel, welcome on the Meaningful Podcast. How are you doing?
Sam, great to be here, man. Thanks for the little offline chat ahead of time. I think we're ready to rock and roll.
Absolutely. We're definitely ready to rock and roll. And I'm very, very eager for these conversations. Always love to feature an ex-military guy, and I think your story is quite outstanding. But to kick us off, tell us more about Max Fab Consulting, please.
Yeah. So Max Fab, short for Maximum Fabulous, really spawned from my last combat tour in Iraq. And as a leader in that type of situation, doing combat trauma in a theater hospital, kind of MASH on steroids. We've all seen MASH, so there's some corollaries there. Sam, when you're a leader, sometimes the most important question you answer every day is when somebody says, "How are you doing?"
Mm.
And because you set the tone for the organization right then and there, at least for the next 8 hours, 12 hours, however long the shift is, right? And if you say something like, "Well, I could be better," or this place sucks, or whatever, then the person you're talking to, they could probably be better, and the place sucks. And so when asked that question, how you doing, Chief? At that time, Chief, how you doing? I would say Maximum Fabulous. And when people would hear it at the first time, they would kind of stop and go, "What the heck is that?" And I would tell them, I'd say, "Well, here's the deal. One thing that we control every day in every situation is our attitude. And if your attitude is Maximum Fabulous, or you're working to get to Maximum Fabulous, which I consider the top of attitudes, then we're probably headed in the right direction. We're probably going to be able to handle adversity, because in the situation we were in, it was an adverse situation with a lot of tough times." And so that kind of stuck. It stuck to the point that when I left Iraq, they pulled down the Geneva Convention Red Crescent flag off the top of the trauma center, and it's embroidered. And if I had a different backdrop, I'm in Arizona now, but if I had my Montana backdrop, the flag's up there, and across the bottom of it, along with some other things across the bottom of it, it says Maximum Fab. So
Beautiful.
Max Fab Consulting, which is predicated on creating a platform for organizational motivation, leadership, and to work with this veteran transition phenomenon, which is the next hill to climb, and some of the modalities that go around that, with helping business owners and organizational leaders be more in tune with how to create an environment for veterans, so that when we go through this transition, we can find our next, because it's a big struggle. So
Beautiful.
there you go.
Beautiful.
There's Max Fab.
No, that's great. And I want you to sort of bring us back to sort of the beginning of all this. You were mentioning the fact that obviously you were a leader in the military. Now you're trying to lead the way leadership-wise within this transition. Was that always basically a key component of who you are, basically from a very young age to sort of aspire to be in such a leadership position?
So, interesting question. So I grew up in Northern California in a small rural community that was a farming community. And I grew up in a dairy farm environment on a dairy farm. And if you understand anything about that, you got to milk cows twice a day. And there's a lot of work that goes along with that.
Sure.
So I think everything you probably need to know in life happens on the farm. Life, death, adversity, success, failure, resiliency, creativity, critical thinking, all of those type of things, along with trying to find some work-life balance and take care of yourself on top of that. So, so from those foundations, that's kind of there. The story I like to tell is oddly enough, there's a guy that was a year behind me in high school that ended up in Montana with me. He went out in the world and did his thing. I went out in the world and did my thing. And as we kind of settled later on in life, we ended up in the same place. And we actually worked side by side on COVID for a higher education. He's a professor for an institution of higher education. I led all of the COVID operations for that university. He was my number two, and he's a scientist anyway, so he was the right guy because he understood cell biology. And I looked at him one day because we were very similar, and I looked at him one day and I said, "How did we end up having similar leadership philosophies?" And it's fairly natural for us, and it's something that we've always done.
Right.
And he said to me, because from the time we were kids to now, the cows always ate first. And ironically, we've always been in a service mindset. So when we walk into rooms, it's not about us. When we walk into organizations, it's not about us. When we're charged with the care and feeding of other human beings, I say the most important thing you'll ever do in your life is raise children, and the second most important thing you'll ever do in your life is lead other people in an environment where it's highly influential, because you got to get that right. And I don't think you can do that without putting them first. It can't be about you. So.
Interesting. And tell me about basically that navigating that transitions, right? So you're veterans basically entering the civilian workforce. It's something that we talk quite a bit about, but I'd like to pick your brain on it.
Yeah.
I suppose, what are the most common challenges that basically you guys face when transitioning back into a civilian career? Anything that comes to mind?
So have you ever seen the movie Shawshank Redemption?
Oh, yeah. One of my favorite movies of all time.
Okay. So that's military transition. Do you remember in the movie where the guys get out and they go into that halfway house and they have to get a job? And some of them end up going back to jail, and some of them end up hanging themselves, right? And I don't want to be overly dramatic, but we still lose 22 veterans a day to suicide in this country.
Wow.
And it is the institutionalization that you see in Shawshank Redemption is no different than being in the United States military. And I tell people, when you come out, I compare it to this. It's like being in a movie and the guy's running away from something, and he opens a door, he steps through and he closes the door behind him. And when he turns around, he's standing on a plank that's just the width of his feet. And below him is a bottomless pit. Because when you're a veteran and you leave, you take the uniform off and you leave, there's really nothing societally out there that is foundational that you can kind of help navigate.
Sure.
And so, statistically, 50% of all veterans leave their jobs in their first jobs in their first year, and 65% are gone in 2 years. And that can go as high as 85%. The reason being is that we're looking for where we came from, right? So Shawshank Redemption, the institutionalized thing, you get out, the world's moving too fast, the structure's too much. And so what do? You go rob a bank and go back to jail, because that's what you know. Well, in the military, we can't go back. So we have to swim in the ocean that we're in now. And, then it's just, quite frankly, it's difficult. And sometimes we tend to, make bad decisions as we try to reassimilate. Some of us start our own companies and just work for ourselves because that's easier. But the transition thing is really based around a few things. One is the team. You lost your team. Two is the camaraderie. Three is the sense of purpose, right? When you get up and put your uniform on every day, salute a flag and go through that type of stuff, you absolutely know why you exist. And as men, I won't say that it's any better for the women, but as men, man, you talk about a young man that does 4 years. Now I did 30, just over 30.
Wow.
But you talk about somebody that does 4 years, and this is the peak of their life. They're in the best physical shape they've ever been in. They've accomplished things they thought they never could. They're full of self-confidence. They've been developed formally and informally as a leader. They've been in charge of other people, probably in critical situations like I described in combat. And you get out and somebody says, well, your resume doesn't make any sense to me. We could give you a job over here. And they end up driving a truck. They just had millions of dollars worth of equipment and 5 or 6 people, and they're fending off the enemy, and he or she's trying to keep people alive. And the next minute somebody says, no, really, you kind of fit over here, and you don't fit over there. And quite frankly, the people that you're working for and the people that are working for the people that you work for work, 2 or 3 levels above. Quite frankly, you could probably be doing those jobs. Now, we don't run into organizations normally and go, I could do that job, or tell people that. But it's very frustrating to us. The other one that will make you smile a little bit is when you're structured in the military the way you are and you come into the civilian world, civilians are like undisciplined savages. A meeting's supposed to start at 8. Half the people are there at 8. Another chunk come in at 8:10. Somebody wanders in at 8:15. The meeting's supposed to be for an hour. It goes to an hour and a half. For us, that's all disciplinary action. You show up 15 minutes late, it's disciplinary. And you go, well, this is, it's a bunch of savages. Well, it's not really that they're savages. That's the culture. And because most civilians schedule a meeting from 8 to 9 and then 9 to 10, and they don't leave themselves enough time to walk across a hallway or to have the, previous meeting run over a little bit, everything backs up throughout the day. And that's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. So there's a transition piece there for the military folks too. Now, that all sounds ominous and you're unable to overcome it. But that's what prompted me to start Vet Ready and to start this conversation with non-veteran leaders or organizations to say, hey, in the United States, we have an American Disabilities Act that tells us what our workplace has to look like if you're in a wheelchair. Period. You have to do it. The stairs have to be a certain way. You have to have a ramp. The doors need to be so wide. The bathrooms need to be a certain way. So we know how to do that, but when we get veterans, we don't know how to do the same things. So that's the mission.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll come back to dive deeper into for your program Vet Ready, which is fantastic. But how do you think that your military experience influenced your approach to leadership developments? Because let me tell you one of the best quote that I ever got. One of my very wealthy friend actually reside in Denver, Colorado, and we sit down in Arizona. We were both speaking at the same event, and I was talking to him about his past life and being in the Navy and so on, and I said, how can you guys have such faith in only your ability to basically be able to fight at this extent where your life is basically in danger at pretty much every single points from the morning all the way to whatever mission you're on. But what type of basically camaraderie and I suppose leadership emerged out of that? And he said, you know what, Sam, the reason why leadership is very hard to explain for people that was not in the military is that when you are in there, the first rule is I would die for you because I know you would do the same thing for me. And when you have that level of stakes basically between any two beings, it's something that you can have very, very, very simply. You can talk about it, but you will never comprehend it if you were not basically in the middle of that battlefield. So just tell me how does that obviously influence your leadership developments, even in the civilian sector?
Well, I'll tell you, the best thing about the military is that they understand that they have to start developing you as a leader, not as a manager, Sam, not as a manager, not as a hyper manager. Hypermanagement is not leadership light. Hypermanagement is still hypermanagement. Nobody's ever been able to lead by hitting the send button, and nobody's ever been able to lead by having a perfect looking spreadsheet or a schedule or a checklist. That's not how it works. Leadership's dynamic. Your leadership style needs to change probably every 5 minutes sometimes, especially in the military. So I only put that caveat on top of your Navy friend there to say he's right. It's about the guy to the right and to the guy to the left.
Sure.
So the development piece is exposure, right? It's muscle memory. And I know people don't want to hear this. You can't read the 5 Hows, the 7 Whys, and the 12 Habits. It doesn't work, Sam. You can't rip the back page out of a Simon Sinek book and put it up in your cubicle and go, I'm doing these 12 things. Why is everybody quitting on me? Why is the workforce unhappy and those type of things? Because I'm doing these. It's not how that works. What works is that it's time and effort and work. It is like growing a bonsai tree, except that sometimes you have 10 trees or 20 trees or 1,000 trees or 10,000 trees. And you have to clip every single one of them, and you don't get immediate satisfaction every single day when you go back and look at it, right? That truly is leadership. If you want to be a leader, you got to get in it. Sometimes it smells really bad. Sometimes it feels so good, but you got to get in it. You got to be part of it, and you need to be around other leaders. It's not a solo thing, man. If you're a young person that aspires to lead other people and you don't have a mentor, you're struck out. You just can't jump into that pond on your own. Find somebody that you admire, that you identify with, their core leadership abilities, and marry up with that person and look them straight in the eye and say, I want you to mentor me. Because guess what? Most people that are leading a lot of people, they don't run around going, I need a protege. They don't do that. But I've never seen one say no when they've been asked to be a mentor.
Beautiful. It's this very interesting thing in mentorship is basically this concept of when you have a mentor and mentee. I'm a big believer that every single time you teach, you learn. Every single time you learn, you teach. There's this very, very reciprocal basically aspect of it, which I think is quite beautiful. Now, you were basically stating a few of the main challenges when we were doing this basically transition into the civilian world. And one thing I was very, very, very happy to dive deeper in, because I think it's quite outstanding, is basically your Vet Ready basically program. Tell me more about, on a tangible levels, how they address these challenges, and perhaps just sort of explain it further so that our audience can comprehend it.
Let me start with the overall business challenge of Vet Ready as it correlates with Max Fab Consulting. You would think, if I went to you with a value proposition of, if you lose a person in your workspace, to replace that person, it costs you half of the full FTE. So easy numbers, right? $100,000 FTE, it's going to cost you between $30,000 and $50,000 to replace them. If through the Vet Ready program, I can save you one person, it would pay you anything that you could ever pay me. I mean, I don't do this to get rich. So, and I do stay on free as a consultant for a year. If I told you that as the value proposition because most companies and organizations out there, they're probably their largest crazy maker is retention, turnover, and recruiting, right? Just because of the way the workforce is structured and the generational stuff, generational leadership, right? Z's and millennials and how all that works. So you got to understand all those things.
Yes.
So you would think, and then you tag on the piece of, and you can do this through bringing veterans on board. Just make sure that you have the right culture, and you can build. The veterans can assimilate into your organization. It will help solve a lot of these problems. You would think that somebody would sign up for that tomorrow. Sam, it is either me. I'm not the only one doing this, by the way. There's a few out there. Sam, it is either me, or it goes back to good, hard-proven, some literature that you can read, and good, hard-proven human defaults. When you talk to somebody about changing their culture and tweaking an organization in a cultural way, they run. It scares them to death.
It's a difficult sell for sure.
they run. So the magic of it is that I will only work with C-suites. I can't go in at the mid-manager level. That's not how this works, because you have to have the harder conversation of, yes, this is something we want to do because there's a benefit for us, plus there's a benefit for the veterans, and we have a gap. So let's create the environment to do those things. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but the drive on Vet Ready is really attacking this big empty space that I talked to you about when you close the door and you're standing there, is to fill that hole so that when the veteran takes their first step forward, there's actually some foundation there. It won't be perfect. But if a veteran can identify, I'll give you the best example, Sam. And here's probably where things really get misaligned. All of the services, the American military services, have their own core values, but I think each and every one of them holds, let's use one that's common to all of them: integrity. I know personally when I got out and I started to look for a job, and I know when I talk to other veterans, when we're looking at an institution to go work for, we look at their values. And a lot of civilian institutions pick integrity as a core value. So what happens, because, integrity in the military goes back to what your Navy friend said, the guy to your right and the guy to your left. And because you're going to do the right thing when I'm not looking, it means you've got my right or my left. And so I'm not going to die because you're doing your job. You're not going to die because I'm doing my job.
Yes.
Think about how many, I'm not even going to give you a descriptive. I'll let you answer this question. How many organizations in the world have integrity as a core value that's on their wall somewhere, on a plaque, it's on their wall, that every 5 minutes in the organization it's violated?
A lot of them. Let's say most.
So remember I talked about thinking that people are savages because they're late for meetings?
Yeah.
We can be quasi-tolerant of that if we're taught as to why the culture is and those type of things, and you can probably take integrity, United States military, life and death. Integrity, like the United States military. Don't adhere to it, you're out. You're excluded, right? I can't have you in the mix because you'll get people hurt, right? We take that into an organization and it says integrity, and 5 minutes later people are telling lies, or they're cheating, they're signing things off that they didn't do. The next thing you're on the online looking for the next job. And 50% of us go, and that's a big one.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Actually, this integrity example, I've never heard it before, but I think you're spot on. You already said it twice. You have the core, right? Core principle, core values. I want to dive a little bit deeper into this, because basically sort of the art of leadership is core principles and practice, right? And when you're thinking about it, basically within your understanding of it and within your own advocacy, what are your fundamental basically principles of effective leaderships in the civilian world? Perhaps tell me more about the few things that you come back over and over concerning your consultancy.
Sure. I think number one, Sam, is that a lot of leaders miss the opportunity to communicate at a level with their entire institutions as to what their personal values are, what they see as important core values for an organization, and to articulate those in a way that other people can operationalize it, and they can articulate it in a way that they understand it. Far too often we bring our own values with us, and when somebody in the organization violates our own values, we turn that into an organizational disciplinary action.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it might not even fit into the HR thing, it's, no, they did this, so we're going to do that. Well, some people, let me give you an example. When everybody shows up to basic training, Sam, we all come from all over the United States. You know how big the United States is, a big place. So being from Philadelphia is not like being from New Mexico. It's not the same. It's just not the same, right? It's no different. Being from Montreal is not the same as being from Saskatoon.
Yeah, that's well.
I spend a lot of time in Saskatchewan. So, and I've been to Montreal. They're not, it's all Canada, but they're not the same. Not even
Correct.
close, by the way. Right. So you put all those people in a room, and some of those people showered once a week, and some of those people showered twice a day.
Mm.
Right. Which one do you discipline? The one that washes too much or the one that doesn't wash enough? Or are both of them right? And the fact that I take a shower every other day is wrong.
Yeah.
If I'm in charge and I have a bias based on what I value and I don't like body odor, then that person's probably not going to work for them. And so I know this sounds complex, but here's where I'm going with this. Leaders in organizations make assumptions that people understand clairvoyantly what their value sets are. And you can't do that. You have got to clear, concise, credible, consistent communication. There's a C for it, right? That's like explosive, right? C4.
Yes, that's what I was about to say.
So you have to do that. You have to, because it is that powerful. It is explosive. If you can get that right, you have to do that. So in this, if you take that ready, and you start to try to work with organizations to be clear and concise on what their intention is. A lot of times when they articulate it out loud, it equates to work. It's work. It's work, and it goes back at leadership is hands-on. It's in every second of every day thing. So
yeah,
I hope I didn't confuse you there, but
no, absolutely not. I'd love if you can get very practical and tangible and share a success story where those principles basically you just shared at a significant organizational improvement. Give me a tangible example of a company you work with. Might not want to share the name, whatever is possible, to that basically where we can get a clear sort of before and after sort of picture. Is that possible?
Sure. I'll just give you an example of what I do as the attention step to my workshops.
Sure.
Okay. And this is all about closing the gap. I have a whole keynote speech I do on the 25-yard gap, and it's a whole other thing, but it's very powerful because it really challenges the human in us to take the steps to close the 25-yard gap to do this. So I facilitate the closure of the 25-yard gap for veterans with the non-veterans. Now I do this all in a room. Usually I'll have between half a dozen and a dozen veterans and a half a dozen and a dozen non-veteran leaders of the organization, preferably the CEOs, the presidents of organizations. Very simple, Sam. Take a whiteboard, draw a line down the middle. On the left is the non-civilian side. On the right is the veteran side. This is not rocket science, right? I don't need 10,000 because that's the management piece of it. I'm not interested in that. The leadership piece of it's what goes on the board. So the first question is to the non-veterans, and it is, give me adjectives, one or two word descriptors of veterans. Now you can imagine what those are, right?
Yeah.
Courageous, leader, resilient,
discipline,
creative, discipline. Yeah. See, there's your word. So that word would go on there. And then I tell the veterans, I say, give one word descriptives of your veteran transition and your walk through civilian life. Broken, no purpose, lost, angry, overwhelmed.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, even I can see. Look at your nonverbals on your face. It has ended up in tears, Sam. I've had non-veterans in tears, and they sit back and they go, "Well, I never realized." Well, of course, this is why you're not where you probably need to be with veteran transition. This is kind of what you need to meet. And the veterans, so 25 yards is predicated on the distance from one end of a military barracks to the other.
Okay.
And I happen to be, the reason that the keynotes, the 25-yard gap is, I got appointed as a student leader, as a trainee leader, which is the kiss of death in basic training. Because then your fellow trainees hate you and the training instructors hate you. The drill instructors hate you. Hate is a rough word, but it's just, you're
There's tensions.
You're a sports guy. You're the meniscus in the knee, right? You're that squishy. So, so, do you think when I was on one end of the barracks in my bed and I had 12 other guys that I was responsible for at the 25th yard, do you think that I could have effectively led that organization by leading through the assumptions that I made 25 yards away? Or did I have to walk? No, you've got to walk down to the other end. Well, at the other end of that 25 yards was the guy named Bradley. This is why you'll see some corollaries in my talk. Was a guy named Brad. Now, I told you where I was from and how I grew up. Bradley was a black guy from inner city Philadelphia. Do you think he was going to resonate with my leadership style based on the assumptions that I had of him?
Probably not.
No bueno. And I'm telling you, that 25 yards was the most painful area that I ever operated in, maybe in my entire life.
Oh, wow.
Because in there was 11 other people.
Sure.
Ideally in life, everybody is walking 12 and a half. And somewhere in the middle, we meet and we have a conversation and we clean up our assumptions. We clean up our biases. We start to operate off of something that's reality, hence the whiteboard exercise. Those are home runs because when you can do this at any institution with anything. Most of the time when a company has a problem or you're consulting or you're going in to help them or to answer whatever, ails them, in this case, retention, turnover, and recruiting, whatever ails them, when you go in there, they already have assumption and they already have bias. Mm-hmm. And part of your job in Max Fab Consulting, part of my job within the first hour or two is to get them to realize that there's assumption and bias. And unless you've reached those assumptions and have that bias based on a full closure of the 25-yard gap. So here's another movie for you. Remember the Titans.
Not familiar with it.
Don't you need to watch it. It's a great leadership movie. Leadership movie. In there, it's about the integration of black and white football players in the 1960s in high school. True story, as a matter of fact, right? And there's a point in time where the coach changes all the room assignments so that there's a black and white football player in each room at their 2-week summer camp, right? There's a black, and then they end up having 3-a-day football practices, American football, 3-a-day football practices. They end up practicing 3 times a day until they've gotten with somebody else on the team and sat down and learned about them. Mom and dad, brothers and sisters, all the coach is doing is closing that gap. And he's getting rid of the assumptions and the bias so that the team can move forward. Because until then, there's going to be prejudice and anger and hate and all the other things that go along with it.
One thing that
I think this is a tipping point in most organizations.
Okay, no, that's very interesting. And you were talking about your motivational speaking, and that is very interesting because one thing that directly came to mind, specifically as you were sort of getting deeper into this example of the hard, basically that hard group where on the other side was a black guy from Central Philadelphia. I'm wondering, as you know this, right, as you have basically this baggage and wisdom base that comes with it, how do you tailor your message to resonate with a diverse audience? How can you make it so that basically not only the people in which fits sort of your brain structure and sort of your background understands it, but everybody else? Tell me about how you sort of harmonize that.
Sure. I'm actually giving a speech at a DEI conference in Billings, Montana on the 9th of April. It'll be my I guess, third one for that. Oh, nice. And DEI is going to change drastically because of our new administration.
Correct.
And I think that having an acronym for anything, I think, is unhealthy. I'm speaking because I speak from the veteran viewpoint, because there's this look at what I'm doing, and then the inclusion of veterans, and so there's an I piece in there and inclusivity. But what I'm going to talk about now, let me give you the rest of the story. I'll tell you exactly how that happens. Let me get the rest of the story. So you're talking a 30-year career, and this all happened to me in the first 3 months. Okay. When you walk down to the end of that barracks to help Bradley, his name was Bradley, ended up being a great friend and a fellow medic, and as we started, when you go on the other end to help Bradley make his bed, and he's struggling, and you're in a hurry. Have you heard the term jerry rig before?
Yes.
There's another word that you can put before Jerry that starts with an N. That's the word I grew up with.
Okay.
The derogatory word to describe black people.
Yes, I got it.
That's the word I grew up with. So naturally, out of my mouth, through ignorance, I used that word. I told him to N-rig it. That led to a lot of closure, buddy. That led to a lot of closure. And that interaction, I hold that interaction as probably one of the most significant things that happened in my life. Because for some reason, I was mature enough to know that I had a gap. I was mature enough to put my leader title and my ego and everything in my pocket and start to go have some hard conversations. I've done that for the last 45 years. So, you know, I leave that to you as, you know, you ask, you know, how do you get that to resonate? Well, when you tell that story to people, you challenge them.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess what I find is the higher you go up in an organization, and I had this later on when I was leading at the executive level in the military, there was times my wife was great about it. There was times I needed a little shake. Said, hey, you know, yeah, you know where you're at, but you got to get regrounded. You know, you got to get regrounded. You need to take a trip, go down to where the bottom is. So I'll give you a better example, Sam. So you know the term, the rats are jumping the ship. The rats are leaving the ship. Well, why do the rats leave the ship?
Could be a lot of things, right? Could be a lot of things.
Right.
But probably disconnection with where the ship was going.
Right. Well, maybe. Or maybe, so the rats live below the waterline on a ship. So the rats are the first to know when there's a leak. Figurative,
right.
Literal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so on a leaky ship, the rats jump off. And it used to be an indicator on the ship that something was going on poorly down in the hold.
Right.
Now, if you go down there and there's a big hole in the ship and all it's doing is sinking, right? Don't you wish you'd had a better relationship with the rats so that somebody would have came and told you when it was a small leak?
Yeah.
And you wouldn't lose the whole organization and all the people in it. So these type of things are paramount. And what happens is that when you're in certain leadership positions, so you asked the question, when you're in certain leadership positions, you've got to understand that your perception of the organization and the people you lead is probably not 100%. And you've got to work to get to 100%.
Yeah.
Because when I go into organizations and I talk to people at the worker bee level, the very tactical level, when I talk to people at the tactical level and I talk to a CEO, it's never the same. Now, when it's close, I celebrate that. I go, you know what your people are saying and what you're saying is really close, which is really healthy. Now, that's a low percentage. Normally it's, I know that you feel like the water is calm, but underneath it's not so calm. And so
it reminds me of Henry Ford. Actually, he said something along the lines of coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, but working together is success. And which always sort of stick with me. I'm wondering, as you were talking about DEI, basically in all sorts of diverse, basically methodology to build successful teams. What do you think are the key elements of building cohesive and high-performing teams? Do you think that there's a component in there that basically include that doctrine, or what do you think basically comes from to formulate a collective in which basically work together? And what are some of the secrets behind that, you think?
I think you have to value respect and you have to demonstrate it. You have to insist on it. Period. And respect is only garnered through there's a merit based thing, right? That guy works hard. They're always here on time. They don't call in sick. They fill in when they're needed. If I need help, they're always there for me. And vice versa. So that's kind of an operational respect. The other thing is everybody's different. Things may be perfectly rosy to you, but somebody else has pain. People come to work with pain. You're leading people and they have pain. And the relationship that you have with them, especially as a leader, sometimes you're going to get more of it than you want. Now be careful. Be careful when you ask somebody how they're doing when you're leading them, because you might get to answer. And you might not want to hear about my daughter was diagnosed with leukemia yesterday, and I don't know how I'm going to, whatever it is. My husband was killed in a car accident, or my dog died. That stuff matters. And so to build, you're talking about these high performing teams, right? All the lower level stuff, the form, storm, norm, perform. You're talking about these high performing teams. High performing teams do a couple of things. One is they trust each other, and two is they respect each other. And the only way to do that is that you have to have those need to be core tenets. You need to demonstrate them. You need to insist on them. And sometimes you have to let some intellectual capital go to good intellectual. Sometimes you have to let intellectual capital go to maintain that culture. And you'll find out that that's the winning formula. Not keeping around the brain scientist guy that's the perfect, what do they call them? Rocket surgeons, right?
Yes.
Keeping around the rocket surgeon because you think you can't do without them, but they're caustic and they're disrespectful and they talk down to people. I grew up in medicine. I've been in a lot of operating rooms. Yeah, I mean, I grew up. I'm a medic. I'm a trauma nurse. I worked independently by myself. I've seen my own patients, and I've worked in really austere environments as the only medical person within hundreds of miles, thousands of miles.
Okay.
I've done life and death, and I've been in plenty of operating rooms where there's a surgeon that has a team that he respects them, they respect him. The surgeries go fine. And I've been in operating rooms where the surgeon thinks that he's one step away from the Lord Jesus Christ. And when something goes wrong, he starts throwing things around and calling people names that he shouldn't call them. Well, all of a sudden he's looking around and he goes, well, I want these people on my team. And you have to tell him they're not coming. Why? They don't want to work with you because you don't respect them. Be careful.
It's interesting because that directly leads me to another question, which is, how do you address conflicts within teams to maintain productivity and morale, right? I believe it's very simple to go sort of basically across the balance line, if you will, like the surgeons that just throw away everything because there's a kerfuffle within the process. How do you address that basically in a healthy fashion?
Well, so if it's all done respectfully, right? Then there has to be a diagnostic of what the core problem is, why you have conflict, right? Then there has to be a conversation about the conflict that has to be non-emotional. I was going to be flip and say you just pick sides and then go after the other person, but it was going to be a joke. But I say that for the context of this. And then you really need to have because sometimes the conflict, the diagnostic piece of the conflict actually shows you something deeper in the organization. It's not just two people. It's a symptom of something in the culture, right?
Sure.
So you have to do the diagnostic. And then you have to tell people we're going to do this predicated off of respect, right? And then hopefully you have policies, procedures, and rules and values that you can say, here's where this aligns, and this is the way forward that we're going to go. And if most people will hate the answer or hate the decision for about 72 hours. Most people that are high functioning and not hyper emotional will come to the conclusion of, yeah, that's probably where we need to be, and they'll move forward. So you have to be patient.
Okay, so about 3 days.
Yeah, about 3 days. The thing is, if you try to do things, you got to put people in a room together. That's for sure. If you try to do things soft, and I've tried it 1,000 different ways, and so this comes from a lot of pain. If you try to do things soft, what happens is that then people make interpretations of how you handled it, right? Because there's no answer, right? It's just squishy. And people go, well, did he just say it's okay on Fridays to not do this, but you Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, you better do it or you're in trouble? As soon as you have ambiguity, right, in the expectations, then you should expect everything to be ambiguous and squishy. And then you've heard about coaches. You know, you're a hockey guy, right?
Yes. Hockey, soccer guy, sports guy.
Your Habs have gone through some lean years, right? How many times did you hear about the coach losing the locker room, not having the culture? You know why? It's because they get too squishy. Well, why am I, I'm not gonna tell Mario Lemieux he's sitting out for a game. But you tell the left winger on your fourth line he's sitting out for a game. No, can't do it. You'll lose all locker room. Because guess what? The left winger on the fourth line might be best friends with everybody on that team, and they think he's the most upstanding human being on the whole team. And they could care less if Lemieux sits for a day.
It's possible, yeah.
Yeah, so you got to be careful with that. I hope that helps.
No, absolutely. I love this. You were saying offline there was he's going to be an hockey example, so we just got it. So that's great.
Yeah.
So we check that off.
Right.
But something that is also very maybe a little bit more of a tougher subject, but it really always been sort of on my mind. I'd love to hear love to pick your brain on this. But obviously, there's a lot of PTSD that we talk about. It's a topic that we get to hear more about. And I think personally, I think it's a good thing. I'm sure you'll probably agree if it's done in a meaningful and respectful fashion. Sure. And sort of those moral injury, I suppose, as I like to call them. How does your consultancy, I suppose, make sure to support obviously development dealing with these type of I suppose struggles? And what resources or programs basically you recommend for organizations aiming to support basically their veterans employees?
Sure. Well, trauma is not military specific, nor is moral injury. So,
yes,
so
absolutely.
we need to understand that. And trauma and moral injury in our female population is the numbers would probably astound you if you had the real numbers.
Is that right?
It's pretty significant. A couple of things. First of all, I'm the proud owner. I don't want you to hear me say this. I'm the proud owner of PTSD and moral injury. I've written about it in the books, and I don't mind talking about it. I did mind talking about it, and I did have a lot of problems with it when I was a victim of PTSD and moral injury. Ownership of these things is paramount. Okay. And I'll open some doors for you, and then it'll probably show you what people should be doing for veterans or anybody with PTSD in your organization. If you have 100 people in your organization, 40 of those people are enablers, 20 of those people that probably have some level of mental health need. 2 people are suicidal, and then you have people that don't have issues but know about it. So okay. 40 somewhere in there it equals 140, 30, 20, 10, something like that. But yeah, so long story short is trauma, PTSD or PTS, is things that you can't unsee, unhear, and unsmell. There's your combat piece of that. For me, it's probably see and smell are the 2 big things that are my triggers. Moral injury is when you're compelled to do something based on whatever you're doing that goes against what you were morally programmed with as a young child. So, Sam, your mom and dad told you don't hurt animals, be nice to ladies. You're not physical with other people. You pick these things up. You don't litter. All these kind of things, right? These are all kind of things. So, most human beings around the world, no matter what language you speak or what continent we grow up on, you would assume that, let's say, 99.9% of families tell people, don't hurt other people. definitely don't shoot other people or blow other people up. And then you go to
I
war.
hope so.
Right. But yeah, we have a whole faction of our society that is trying to go to war and to do exactly that. Now, we're not trying at such a level that pulling the trigger with another human being at the other end of the crosshairs is normal. In fact, it's abnormal. It's a thing. It stays with you forever when you take another human life. Or in my case, when you see human lives lost time and time again in a very grotesque manner. So that's trauma, and you have to own that. Moral injury, the pieces that I gave you is the trauma piece. Moral injury is the fact that all of my morality is now in doubt because of the actions that I took based on the organization I'm in. So military doctrine, military orders compel you to do things, and it goes completely against everything you've done. I write about this. I've been published with some PhD level stuff, on my moral injury story from Iraq, and I can belabor you with the story, and it's it's a sad story, and if people want to know, but what I want people to know is if you're leading people that have these type of issues, they're not going to come up. They're not going. It's not like I shouldn't. I won't say this. I was going to joke. I was going to pick on the vegans for a minute, but and I'm not a vegan, but vegans are pretty proud of the fact that they take care of themselves. So when you meet them, a lot of times in the first 5 minutes, they want to let you know they're vegan, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It is what it is.
It is what
People with PTS and moral injury are the exact opposite of that. In fact, you might have to know them your entire life, and you still may not know that that's the way it is. I don't mind talking about it because it's therapeutic for me, and I need help. Let me give you an example. What kind of employer are you that when you find out I have PTSD, you give me an accommodation of 1 week, every 1 hour, every 2 weeks paid for me to go see my mental health counselor? That's a win, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty weird. It's pretty good.
So if you're paying me $45 an hour, you're investing $45 in me every 2 weeks for my mental health and my stability and my ability to continue to thrive.
Seemed like a great deal to me. Yeah.
Well, if you don't invest that in me and I don't go to my appointments, you're probably going to end up paying me 2 weeks sick leave because I can't get out of bed because I'm stressed, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a productivity component as well, and I think there's a mental safety component which we talk. I don't think we talk enough about it, but I think it's so important. There's sort of those sort of little, well, if you can call it an accommodation, but I think it's just probably just being a decent human beings at that point. But when you're thinking about it, there's also the fact that within the time that he's going to be working, let's take you for example. If we make such an accommodations, there's not going to be the fact that if I told you no, then you basically have all these other narrative that comes in basically across. Well, am I not worth basically $45 every 2 weeks? There's all these separate narrative that may come basically overlapping with the topic, right?
Right. You want to, let me tell you the answer I get most of the time. Well, if I do that for a veteran with PTSD, then I've got to do it for everybody. And I don't even know how many people that is. And then pretty soon everybody will just be at the therapist.
Right.
It's not true. Because you can do that for the veteran. And if you communicate clear, concise, credible, consistent, if you the C4 thing, if you do that, right, your organization understands exactly what you're doing. And you say out loud, we have certain people that are working for us that have had some, trying times in our lives, to include defending your freedoms and the country. And there's going to be times where this company is going to invest in these people because they invested in us for a little bit of time. I understand everybody may need certain accommodations, and we can take things on one-on-one, work with your employers. But here's where we're going to start. The reason I say that, Sam, is because everything that you just described can be under the main heading respect.
Yes.
And we just have to respect each other. I'll save some of this for when we get closer to the end. But you don't know what you don't know. So you can navigate the world in that state, or you can start filling in the gaps.
Well,
Yeah, absolutely. It's what's fascinating, Dave, and I've been around, like I said, a lot of veterans from just the fact that there's a lot of them in business, and I really respect that world. It's a definitely a million world than who I am as a man right now, but we never know. Why not? Why not think of a one day of me serving? It could be possible, but there's sort of this very interesting thing that I was able to retrieve within your story, which is also, again, you're a public speaker, you're an author as well, and I want to dive deeper into that book because I had a chance to see the preview of When the Cows
Mm-hmm.
Lies Down, and
Oh,
it was very, very interesting. I think there was a lot of great insights and inspiration basically within
mm-hmm.
it. And let me ask you more of a general questions first. Why did you choose writing as a medium to basically expand your message? What was that important for you?
Never intended to write a book.
That's
Had
what I
an
thought.
English
That's why I'm
teacher that
asking
told me
this.
I should go in the military because I'd never make it in college. And and I went in the military and had extremely successful career and got 4 college degrees and wrote 2 books. And so I think I won that one. I think I came out on the right side of that one. I'm a storyteller, Sam, and I've told some already, just, kind of briefly, but I'm a storyteller. And I think, most people, not all, but most people resonate pretty well when they can get a visual. And my stories are sometimes around the farm, which is, the cows are a metaphor for just things in life, right? Just challenges in life, or warning signs in our life or our business or those type of things. So, um, so why I say that is that never intended to write a book, but the people around me that I love, right? Because here's the thing, my team, right? We can talk about life teams. The people around me that I love, or at least cared about me, said, some of this stuff needs to get written down. And I thought, well, I'm just not going to write. Just going to not, I'm not going to profess.
Hmm.
Uh, I said to myself, okay, what makes people, if I'm speaking on a stage, what makes people lean forward in their chair? What makes people, put their phone down and lean forward because I'm saying something? And it's failure, right? As soon as you talk about when you screwed something up really bad, everybody wants to listen, right? Because I think
Right.
misery loves company, right? I think misery loves company. If you start talking about there I was and I hit 4 home runs and we won a World Series and I'm the best thing since sliced bread, people are asleep. They're asleep. And the people that showed up thinking that you're an idiot in the back are saying it loud, are saying it out loud. See, I told you this guy's an idiot. So So it's storytelling and it's predicated off of failure. Why did it go in the book? What did I find in the book that was important? As I started to get brave enough to put words on paper that I knew would be out there for an eternity. When you write a book, you have to send it to the library in Washington, D.C. They have every single book, right?
Yes.
And 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 so it's there forever and ever and ever. It goes on a shelf and it sits there forever and ever. I mean, somebody could pick up that book 1,000 years from now. Who knows?
Sure. Why not?
Yeah, and so when you put things in a book, if you're brave enough to really put stuff in a book, not recommendations, and don't tell other people's stories. There's a lot of people out there that, and I'm not slighting them because they got a lot more money than I am. And on this earthly world, they're miles ahead. I think probably in the godly world, I would like to think I'm a little farther ahead than they are. But in this earthly world, um, they're miles and miles ahead because they play off the human condition. I tend to take on the harder things in the human condition. But humans want the answer. They want the checklist, Sam. If I've got to drive from here to here, get a ticket, and go to the hockey game, right? You call somebody up and you go, "Hey, how do I get from here to here and get it?" And they go, "Well, you do this." No, wait a minute. Let me write it down. And they write it down exactly. Drive down this street, go to this place, go in there, talk to this guy, get your tickets, go through this door, go sit in your chair. And people love that. And so people will spend a lot of money for you to develop those things. The 12 whys, the 7 habits, the 5 hows, all this time, all that stuff, it just flies off the shelf. And it's so damaging. So what do? I write for introspection. I write. I give a point in time in my life that correlates to a leadership challenge or a life challenge. And at the end of it, I give you some one-line bullets to make you think, and I leave it to you. And if you choose not to do the work, fine. So the first book that I wrote, Giving Back, a lot of people carry that around as kind of a reference guide now.
Beautiful. So how has the book perhaps been perceived in your readers and in particular, I suppose, within your target audience?
Well, I'll tell you, I think the target audience is, anywhere from 14 years old, 13, 14 years old to 90. And
Wow. Okay.
it's kind of that way. Like anything, Sam, some people consume it and they'll find it elementary. That might be your arrogant, narcissistic people. They'll go, "Oh, I've done this 1,000 times." The book is not written to improve everybody. The book is written for you to have a perspective to understand that there's some things in life that people go through, and so the book can actually help you help somebody else, right? And the book's predicated a lot off of a respect. So
Okay. Interesting. You know what, Dave? You mentioned God and you mentioned also godly.
yeah,
3 times basically within these conversations.
sure.
I want to slightly touch on that. How important has been as your faith been in your journey and perhaps continue to be for everything that you're doing? Tell me more about that component of
Sure. I appreciate that, Sam. I had you on this because sometimes people will hit the off button when you want to talk about faith.
Oh yeah, trust me. Go at it.
So let's talk about faith. Let's talk about religion. Let's talk about the book and a book, because there's lots of books, right?
Oh yeah.
But there is the book. There was something that happened in our history. God put Jesus Christ on this earth, and he put him here with a lot of people around him. And you know what they knew how to do? The people around him, you know what they knew how to do? They knew how to write.
Mm,
They knew how to document, right?
yes.
And so they documented stuff. And they got cool names like Paul and John, and, right? They got
These
right?
guys. Yeah.
Yeah, those two, they're just kind of hanging out, right? They're hanging out with this cool dude who's running around trying to talk to people, and he throws in a miracle every once in a while, right? And the only thing he asks anybody to do is just to believe and try to walk your life in the same way that God and Jesus did. Now
Yes.
let's look at some of the qualifiers to walk your life in the same way that God and Jesus did. Giving back, respect, sacrifice, service,
Yes.
right? It's all there. Take your worldly problem with your wife, take your worldly problem with your girlfriend, take your worldly problem with your boss. Take the problem, think about it, boil it down into 7 words, stick it into Google, ask for a Bible reference, and you'll get more good advice on how to handle that problem through how the demonstration of what Jesus did on this earth as a tool from God. It's all right there. Everything else around us, Sam, that pushes and pulls us and makes us eat bad, and we don't exercise, and we get angry, and our skin turns color that we don't want it to turn, and we've got to see the doctor when we have high blood pressure, that's evil. There's only one person that's never missed a day at church. You know who that is?
Tell me.
The devil.
Mm.
The devil's at church. The devil's at work. The devil's in your house. The devil's in your car. The devil is in your phone.
Absolutely. And it reminds me of it's interesting you mentioned this because there was this extraordinary interview actually with Mike Tyson, actually. And Mike Tyson was talking, which is a way wiser man than people give him credit for, by the way.
Yeah.
And he was talking about this concept that you just mentioned, which is when you're blessed by the devil, you're also blessed when you're blessed by God, you're also blessed by the devil, unfortunately. And he was talking about sort of these two worlds that is colliding upon each other, and the fact that, and we see this very often, by the way, I'm sure you saw it plenty of time, people are sort of start this enlightenment phase of their life, and then certainly they're basically being called to doing worse thing and you don't understand why. That's because the devil got tempted, and I believe that vehemently. I do believe that it's a core principle that I believe in for sure. It's so interesting because you're talking about the book, right? And a guy named Paul, another one named basically Timothy, and so on.
John.
Yeah, right. John. Yeah. And so these guys, right? They were that book. Again, I think you did. Yeah, I think that you're right in your assessments. It's not just the conceptualizations of this understanding that this man was the Son of God. Some people call him Jesus. That guy. He did all these sort of miraculous things, and he died for you on the cross and so on. But when you actually seek further truth, you can sort of understand that everything in the world, right? You just mentioned it. Put in 7 words. Put in Google. Ask for a Bible verse. It's probably going to be the deepest thinking that you ever did. And you're right. To me, it's so extraordinary that we have this document that serves as a beacon, as a solutions to pretty much everything that you're facing, and yet there's sort of this reluctance towards it that is truly. I know why it is actually, but it's going to be a much bigger conversation. But it's to me, what I invite people to do is, whatever your opinion is of basically whatever your religious belief is, whatever basically the doctrine you subscribe to, I suppose. If within it basically is a life similar to how Jesus lived, you're doing the right thing. You're on the right path, and that's what's so magical about this. I think that there's a way in which we can all sorts of come to the conclusion that whatever your opinion is, this was noble. This guy, this person was so godlike that's why we think that and he not only we think, but he said he was the Son of God, and there is some magic there. And so I really want to cover that portion because I felt that it was part of your story and who you are.
Yeah. How many kids changed their jump shot to do it with their tongue hanging out when Michael Jordan was famous?
A lot.
And they perfected it, right?
Yes.
Why can't we why can't we idolize and be excited about the examples that Jesus left us on this earth and do the same thing?
Love it.
Over and over again. Because a lot of these a lot of these organizational dynamics can be overcome. Now, I can't go into every organization and say, let's sit down and read John chapter 4, verse 17 here. This is a great place to start, because somebody's going to go, he's a religious nut. He came in here with a Bible. Where's his his Simon Sinek and his Brene Brown? Well, I don't know where Simon Sinek and Brene Brown are in their relationship with God.
Yes.
But their teachings are more powerful if they have one.
Yes, 100%. Absolutely.
Their guidance.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And it should be people should know it. I have a buddy here in town that he was out having dinner, and a guy got up from the bar and walked over, and he goes, "You're doing something right." He goes, "I'm struggling in life." And he goes, "I look at you," and he goes, "Everything seems squared away." He goes, "Give me in one word what the key is." And he goes, "I can't." He goes, "I'll give you 2 words." He said, "Jesus Christ." And the guy goes, "I knew it." He went back to the bar, he paid his bill, and he left. Now, the guy's never seen him again, but obviously he made a decision right then and there as to where he needed to be to get through his pain.
Beautiful. Dave, tell me what are your aspirations and what the future holds for Max Fab Consulting?
So I've taken a little bit of a pivot. Sometimes when you come in heavy and you say, hey, here's my 12-month program or my 3-month program, here's how we're, this type of thing, people shy away. And really what I'm asking, Sam, is I need time to have this conversation like we did. I need time to build the value into things and to get you excited about what you can really do for veterans and how that can help your organizations. And we can have a groundswell across the world for all veterans, be it Canadian or British or Australian. I talk to other countries where, they have the same dynamics.
Sure.
And I really need to get in I need to get into the spaces. I need to be able to, have me come and see you and let me give you the 25-yard gap speech. And then let's have another 30 to 45-minute conversation on how that applies to what we can do after thank you for your service. That's really a platitude. People say thank you for your service, and they usually do it with a stiff arm because they put a 5-yard gap in there and they don't want anybody to get in it, because if they would really do the right thing, they'd say, tell me your story. And if they'd sit and listen to our stories, people that see some value in having a relationship with veterans, and they have this heartfelt, godly side of them that makes them want to take an extra step to build an environment for veterans to thrive, boy, you start solving a lot of problems. So.
Beautiful. Well, you know what? I'll finish this with a portions of a Bible verse that I love, which is Corinthians 13:4-7. I won't remember the whole thing, but it's something around the line of love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily eager, it keeps no records of wrongs, love does not delight in evil, but rejoice with the truth. Mr. Dave Nordel, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on a Meaningful Podcast. And thank you for being so vulnerable. Thank you for being so insightful. And I would love if you could share some last words of wisdom with our audience.
Sure. Every time somebody asks me this question, I always kind of hedge a couple of ways, but here's the deal. Knowledge is power only when shared. We all know a lot of things, and sometimes we hold on to those like secrets and nuggets that we don't want to share because we think they make us weak. And if you're leading people, no matter how, spiritually, organizationally, in your family, as a father, as a mother, if you're leading people, you know things. Hanging on to that knowledge does nothing for you until you share it and you make other people as wise as you. So go out there and share some knowledge.
Thank you for spending your time with us today on the Meaningful Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with someone who could benefit from it. And always remember, your story matters. Make it meaningful. We hope to see you next time.